Top of the morning to you, Stan.
Is that your special detox tea?
This is not, but this is, and by the way, hello, listener. Welcome back. I'm Jamie Marco. With me is my father, Stan
You
Brown.
know who I am. I'm just you. I'm
Yes,
with you.
you are with me. So you're my plus one. I mean, I've got my husband, but you can be my second plus one.
Plus one and a half.
Hmm.
Yes.
So my dad's asking me if it's my new detox tea, and if you follow me on social, months back, I was diagnosed in 2019 with ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune disease that deals with your colon. For lack of a better word, it's a pretty shitty autoimmune disease.
Don't blame me. Don't blame me.
And I have tried so many different things to heal my gut and to heal, gluten-free, dairy-free. And a lot of them work and some of them don't work. And I can certainly go on different steroids, but I've chosen to try and go the holistic route and do my own thing.
Mhm.
And recently, someone introduced me to this really great inflammation tea.
No,
Sorry.
because you don't want to take tea for
I know.
inflammation.
Apparently, I need more coffee. Anti-inflammation tea, and it works. And I feel so much lighter, and I feel better. And
It's
I,
so light, I had to tie her down to her chair.
mm, this is not it. This is actually just, if you want the recipe for the tea, let me know. But this is just lemon and water and
Please
honey.
be advised, I had two sips last night. Woo-hoo!
Oh, of the tea, yes. Like,
Yeah.
isn't that funny? I don't know if you think that really just the two.
Well, it depends. If it's the once initially something is good for you, when you take it initially, I think your system responds in a stronger fashion when you take it over time.
Got it.
It's my first taste, couple of sips. Wow,
Okay.
hello.
All right. I mean, I drink it morning and night. And like this tea is just like in the middle of the day when I'm cold. It's just honey and lemon and hot water. And it's good to detox as well, too. But
Okay, sweetheart.
but I think that is the thing is that we have so much inflammation in our body today from the foods that we eat that I think that the more people, whether you've been diagnosed with something or not, the more things you can do for your body to reduce inflammation in the body, the healthier we are.
Make Jamie healthy again. I'll get the hat later. Hey, let's get to our guest. Let's get
Healthy.
to our
Oh my
guest.
goodness. Okay.
Enough about us.
Seriously, the pressure this person puts on me. Anyone else relate? I mean, dads, am I right?
The storm.
Oh my goodness. If you listen to our episodes, you remember that back in the episode that we had with Nicole Delaney when she said
The
she's
fates say the storm is coming and you won't
don't
survive.
say that.
No,
Oh, thank you for joining and interrupting my dad's. I don't even know what he was doing, but we are live and we are recording.
As
Hello.
we say, saved by the Ida.
I
Good
tell
morning.
you, it's so nice to meet Dad. Hello.
A
And it's so
pleasure.
nice to see you again, Jamie.
You
What are
too.
you doing for lunch later?
I tell you, let's do it. I love it.
Well, it's good to see you. So, I have not really shared a lot about your story with my dad because I really think that the authentic discovery that he has with the wackadoodle questions he might ask is helpful.
Sure.
I know
Love
that
it.
you and so listener, I actually met Ida a few months back when I was connected with her through another amazing, incredible human, a friend of mine that we'll have on in the future as well too. And the wildest thing is that, we connected, we talked all day for a few hours, and then about 15 minutes before we left each other, I found out that she's known my uncle like almost her whole life. So, such a crazy, wild world. But we are so happy to have you on. And our first question we are going to ask you.
Is the snow all gone?
Oh, yeah, she is calling from
No,
New
the
York.
snow is not all gone, but I'm wearing the best is yet to come. I'm
Ah,
wearing the
excellent.
There we go.
yes,
We are
I
fork
love it.
sisters. We are fork sisters, and we will talk about that.
I
I
love
love
it.
it. I will not tell you to fork off.
Fork on, fork
Yeah.
on.
So, if you've read my book or you've heard our episodes, we ask the same question of all of our guests before we get started. And that is, what is your number on a scale of 1 to 10? And we did this with your team in the office there. But on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it's the best day you've ever had, to a one being a day that you probably shouldn't be peopling, but you still have to, right? What is your number today?
And
I'm
fractions count.
yes, decimals count. Yes, I'm going to give myself a solid 7.5 today.
Ooh,
Ooh, we
hello.
like it. Okay.
Pretty
Anything
good,
about
pretty good,
the,
right?
the five is we're leaning into some good stuff there. What would it take for you to go to a 7.75 today?
Well, I have no doubt by the end of our conversation, I will be at least at a 7.25. Just the authenticity of sharing and connecting and just knowing that you bring out the best in others. And I'm sure the apple doesn't fall far from the tree with
Ooh,
Dad there. So I have no doubt I'll be probably an 8 by the time we're done. So
ooh, she's
I give credit to you
No,
guys.
no
smooth.
pressure. Although yeah, my
The
dad, no.
pressure's on.
I mean, I will say that sometimes some of his questions may make your number go like And
Well, I usually start with a session of yogic laughing, but we'll discuss that later.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, it's
Well,
fabulous.
look, sometimes you got to get through the funk, as you would say, right? To get to the other side, avoiding it is the worst thing. So you can ask away anything that's gonna, and I have faith that we'll get to the other side.
I
We
love
have full
it.
license.
We do. So, listener, if you know Ida, you may already know this. If you don't know her, recently she decided to make a pretty big decision and share a lot about her personal life online. And we don't see that happen very often. I always talk about that when we are looking online, we see the real, REEL, all the great things about it, and not the real people. And it's because just sometimes we're not ready to share, or sometimes we don't know how it fits in our life, or it's just in a weird place. But you recently decided to share more about your personal life. Let's not get into what it was about just yet, but share with us what made you make that decision recently to put that out there.
Look, I've always been someone that has been open. So I do always share, but I've always kind of compartmentalized a little bit, in terms of sort of my professional hat and my personal hat. And I do believe that the more you can be real and blend, and I, have felt very much like a mission. It's almost like coming from above, from divine, from, whatever you would call it, source, and felt like I needed to get it out messy and not worry about it being perfect. And it has been very cathartic for me to just share my truth, not worry about who's going to agree with it, or they're going to think I'm crazy. Is it a little too woo woo for you? Is it too real? Whatever it is. And just to be able to actually just say the words. And I think the hardest part was just sort of getting to that, to where I was sort of had the courage to just say it without filter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before we get into it, we're leaving them on suspense right now before we lean into
Sure.
what it was. But what have you seen to be the reaction, or has there been fallout, or has there been success? Like what have you seen since sharing your story that's come from that?
Well, it's been a mixed bag. I knew that it wouldn't resonate with everyone. And I think I've spent a lot of my sort of professional hat sort of being very strategic about, what's going to be best for the masses, and how do you sort of still have the authenticity, but you keep it sort of vanilla, a little bit. And so I think it was a mixed bag in terms of the people that did respond were deeply touched in a very real way, and it led to some podcast appearances. It led to the right people it resonating with,
Mhm.
but there were, I would say, most people it was like, oh, that's nice, or there was sort of not much of a reaction.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was a little bit anticlimactic in that. And then I realized, in thinking of it, when I started to share, I was like, I really didn't do it for the big applause. It was really just to get it out.
For
And
yourself.
those that did respond, I know that they were the right. And it also aligns with my belief system that as long as you take the smallest next step, if it's the right one, that, the next one will appear. And so it already has, including this. I don't think this would have happened if I hadn't shared that truth and we hadn't connected. And, here I am, totally, serendipitous in terms of not even knowing what question is going to come next and just being open to it all.
Ida, is it safe to say, I think we all compartmentalize to a degree for survival purposes, but this really helped you integrate your business life and your personal life, maybe a sense of feeling more whole when it was over, I suppose, no?
It's true, and it is also what I teach. So it's very, I work for the person that Jamie mentioned, Yael. We both work for the Corcoran Group, which is a really incredible real estate firm, and our tagline is "Live Who You Are." And I teach a lot of the branding, and I've been there for 22 years. And so a lot of what my superpower is exactly what you just described, is believing that the more you integrate, the more you embrace all the parts of you, the more you will build success. And it's a scary thing to do, but it always works out if you trust it. And you also jump shaking or scared, like you just do it scared.
You were probably thinking about it for a while. What tipped the scale?
My it finally I got to a point where, it has to do with my son, and so he's no longer living at home, and so I finally had the space to really just process enough
Mhm.
to be like, okay. and also the belief that my story will help others. And so I think it sort of came from a very much a take the tiniest little step, and then
Mhm.
if you get an opportunity, then just do it. And so, yeah, it's kind of just forcing. I've always kind of forced myself by creating. I'm more answerable to others than I will be to myself. So it was partly like joining a writing circle. So I knew I'd write. And
Mhm.
then, sharing it with my friend who has a podcast because I figured she might ask me to be a guest on her podcast. And so all of it was sort of just taking the small actions and then just saying yes, without abandon, just, knowing if it felt right, I was just going to say yes.
Some people may have heard you say your son is no longer living at home, and they would
Yeah.
say to themselves, okay, so he's gone off to college or he's
Right.
moved out, he's 18. But in fact, that is not the case. Tell our
Yeah.
listeners how old your son is, please.
So my son is 12 years old and he is in residence at a place called the Center for Discovery, which is about an hour and 15 minutes from me in the Catskills. And they are an incredible residence school for those with the most complex disabilities. And so yeah, so he is no longer at home and he's 12 years old, which doesn't feel natural.
Mhm.
And that has been the big change in my life of this year is really just adjusting to what that is because it is a long-term move for him.
So let's go back before. Thanks for sharing that. And listener, I think oh, I know you're in for a treat because your story is so interesting and intricate and emotional and just so important for others to hear that maybe don't know the resources that are out there for them if they're living in the same situation. I know that we'll talk about your son's condition, or can I call it a condition? Is that the right
Yeah,
word?
sure, absolutely.
And how
I feel
rare
like
it
I should have
is.
brought the tissues, but
Oh, sorry. I've got some here, but I can't pass them through Zoom. Wouldn't that be
no, it's
cool?
okay. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna let it flow.
Yeah. And so take us back to, this is your story to tell, but I know when we scheduled this conversation, we wanted to talk about your situation with your sons.
Yeah.
And so take us back to, you met your husband. How did you and your husband meet?
We met on Match, so it was an online romance. I thought he was a rebound. I thought he was just going to be kind of get me over the right now guy, and he ended up being the right one. And we're about to celebrate our 16th wedding
Ooh,
anniversary later this month. So
congratulations.
Congratulations.
yeah, yeah,
So you're
yeah.
married for a few years, and then did you decide that you wanted to have children, or did it just happen?
No, we did. I think the reason I got rid of the wrong guy was I like had an epiphany where I said, "All right, I was with the wrong guy for 3 years. It was, amazing, sort of physically and all that." And then I just, had this moment where I said, "All right, I want two paths here. One is going to be I'm going to travel the world and create an empire with my partner, or I want the white picket fence with the 2.5 children." And this guy's neither. And so that sort of gave
Wait a minute.
me,
What kind of guy was he?
look, it was great sex. It was, look, I've always been a very responsible person. I bought my first real estate at 22. I've always had like a great job. Like I've always done that. And he was I'm not going to be responsible and I'm just going to do what feels right. Did it for a few years. It led me to the right one, which of course became the white picket fence, so to speak. But really wanting to have children was what motivated me to make that change and then ultimately, find the right one and get married and a few years later, have our first child,
At least
Nathan.
you get the bad boy out of your system.
That's right. I needed to get it out of my system. I mean, you
Yeah.
can relate to that. You
Yes.
guys must be, I
Oh,
don't know if
there's
you
a
guys don't
book.
talk about that being, father and daughter, but I'm sure you have those wild oats that you sowed.
Yeah. Well, I remember, so I didn't meet my husband until I was 35. We've talked about this because no one else knows this, but you'll hear this again. But there was a book that I read. It was called You Have to Kiss a Lot of Frogs. I don't know if you ever read it or not. It was such a great book, and it just was talking about dating stories. And it's like, you find one, you kind of figure it out, and you have your checklist. And if it's not there, you enjoy it maybe while it lasts. And then the best way to get over a guy is to get under a guy. Just kidding, Dad.
True, true.
But so you figure it out, and you like then you like get older, and you're like, okay, this is what I want, and you go on dates. Maybe you're the same. You go on dates, you're like, all right, you're not checking any of the box, move on, right? Like, or you're the red flags. Like the flags are like the bigger issue, right? Like, oh, here you got three red flags, you were out. You're out. So yeah. So you guys met.
Yeah.
Match.com. Was it a quick courtship? Tell us a little bit about
It
that.
was quick because again, I thought he was the rebound. Like he was the guy that I got under. I was like, all right, I've been in a relationship for I had never done that jump in to anything. So he really, and then I was like, you know what? I'm starting to develop feelings for this guy. And I said to him, it really, and again, I didn't come in it that way. I came at it like, hey, it's fun. Let's just, I'm kind of fresh off this, 3.5 year, relationship. And I just said to him, look, I'm starting to get feelings. I don't know that you're on the same page, so I'm done. So he's like, what do you mean you're done? And it was like very, because I was like, now I realize I do want a relationship and it sort of helps me. And so he was like, oh, wait a minute. Actually, let me take you on a weekend. And so it started to get serious from starting off very casual, just from just realizing it. And of course, he's the first Jewish guy that I seriously, a mensch,
Go
as we
get
would
him,
say,
baby. Go get him.
ended up marrying him. And I read our ketubah the other day, like the sort of Jewish marriage agreement. And I was like, we've really honored all of these things. And it was just a really amazing feeling to read that and be, he's my ride or die, my solid, no matter what, always there. And we have been through a lot. And it has taken its toll on the marriage in a very, big way. And I know why many people with special needs children get divorced.
Sure.
It's a very common thing because it's an incredibly taxing and stressful to a relationship. So the fact that we, have stayed strong in a team and, it's been bumpy, it's a testament to, sort of a real commitment to each other that we have.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Obviously, um, if we all knew how easy it was to get pregnant when we were younger, you probably would have done it younger, right? Because the older you get, the harder it gets. And
Sure.
so you were how old when you fell pregnant?
So I was 34 when I was first pregnant with Nathan. And it did take a year, so it was, a bit of a process, but was so grateful. We actually had the appointment with the fertility specialist the week I think that I found out I was pregnant, and so it was just a wonderful, we can cancel that appointment because now we're pregnant. And of course, turning 35 when you're pregnant, mid-pregnancy, all of a sudden you're advanced maternal age. And, the first half of the
Geriatric
pregnancy, they're like,
pregnancy.
no,
Yeah.
you don't even have to come in, do whatever, like come whenever you. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, you're advanced maternal age. I'm like, if you say that once more. And then it
Yeah.
became, coming in every month. And so I gave birth at 35 with Nathan, who, I've never felt such joy, giving birth. I knew I was meant to be a mother. As soon as I saw him, I said to my husband, don't lose track of that baby, because it was a C-section. And as soon as, they had to take him out of the room and I'm like, follow that baby, it was just a very
Yeah.
raw, deep, indescribable, love that I had as soon as I met Nathan.
Yeah, it's the scariest thing at the same time too, because like you're older, but yeah, they called mine a geriatric pregnancy. I was like, thank you so much. I appreciate being called a high risk geriatric pregnancy. Thank you. Um, but throughout your pregnancy, everything was fine. Everything was
Everything was fine. Everything was normal. I had a beautiful pregnancy. He was delivered at 38 weeks. The fluid was a little bit low, and they kind of said, "Oh, you might want to go." And then they're like, "Yeah, today's the day." And it was, an uneventful. He was beautiful. And the first thing that we noticed, on Nathan was he excessively drooled.
at what age?
So
Like
it's
right from
like in his first year, like he always had to wear a bib. We thought, oh,
Sure.
he must just he'd have that tendency. And then there were other little things, that came up where would show like low muscle tone. He didn't start walking. He had, developed a word, but then lost it. But in terms of like his first year, it seemed very normal, with the exception of always needing to wear like a bib for the excess drooling. It really was all very normal, and I would say that, it wasn't until I would say, when he was probably a year and a half that we started to say that, milestones missed and not walking. And there were just some like regression, some things that I started to kind of bring it up, to the doctor. And like a mother's instinct, you just
Sure.
start to know, that, hey, and I'm not a helicopter mom. Like, I wasn't someone that would sit there and be like, oh my God, it's, 2 ounces. Make sure, I'm very relaxed, when it comes to, the kids, and not sort of feeling all like, high strung about it. So when we got to that point where I kind of started to know, then I started to have some, questions to doctors, and, they were like, you know what? It's fine. You're just a nervous mom.
Mm.
And so, of course, I went and got services to sort of start to help him walk. A friend of ours that had, she was a physical therapist. She started to notice like the W sitting. There were just different things that started to come up. But it wasn't until he was 5 that we got the autism diagnosis, which was like the first sort of diagnosis. We had speech apraxia, and there were literally, I don't know, a dozen different diagnoses that we had, throughout, because it just didn't make sense. Like all the things that they said would work didn't, and all that, and so it was a puzzle, and then we thought, oh, we have the autism diagnosis. Okay, so that makes sense, but it ended up being something, very different, once we sort of got him. And this was only a recent diagnosis that we sort of started to figure out what all the pieces were. And that's something called Phelan-McDermid Syndrome. It's very rare. It's a genetic syndrome that they lack the SHANK3, which the best way I can describe it is it's a protein that the cells use to communicate to each other.
Mhm.
As soon as we got the word that he had that through some advanced genetic testing, and this was only just this last summer, and I looked up all the symptoms, and this is like 10 years of tremendous just challenge with him, and regression of losing skill, and losing the ability to speak, and losing independence, and losing in teachers and therapists and doctors not knowing. And I saw this, it was like a blueprint. I was like, oh my God,
That's it.
it is exactly what he has. And, and I'm still processing it, but that's this very rare genetic syndrome that only 2% of people with
Wow.
autism have. And there's only 65 cases in New York State, only, I think 2,000 in the world.
If
Wow.
they had known earlier with the diagnosis, could the protein have been supplemented?
No, there's nothing that they can do for it. There are things in clinical trials, which is there's an incredible organization called the Phelan-McDermid Foundation, PMSF, and they are on the forefront of research. But there is no cure. There is no, the treatment. And actually, what I found out, and is part of the most devastating part of this, has been for me, is realizing that so many of the treatments that we did, so many of the medicines that we tried with Nathan over the years, because there were years where he didn't sleep, and it was crisis that we were under, where we were giving him medicines that were actually
Make it worse.
probably making it worse, that were not recommended for this particular syndrome. So these antipsychotics
Mm.
and SSRIs and all the things that, we're like, don't understand, what's going on here. We realized that it was not helping him. But again, we did the best we could with the
Sure.
information that we had then. And the genetic testing was not advanced enough
To be
at the
detected.
time where he was tested at 5, right? To show he's only missing one letter from one axiom on one chromosome. It's 22, axiom 22. He's the only one that the lab has ever recorded that has this exact deletion. And so the genetic testing from 5 years ago would just look for a missing part of the
Sure.
chromosome, right? So it would say, hey, this piece is missing. So we know. But now it's gotten advanced enough to know if one letter, is just out of sequence, which is what he has.
Safe to say because the disease is so rare that very little research money is going into that field?
I mean, again, there's an incredible foundation. So I would say that we really lucked out, if you could, in terms of, having an incredible, like as soon as we figured out what it was. There's a whole medical team that we were able to have consult with his medical team that is free of charge, meaning
Mm.
that they provide this to anyone that gets diagnosed. Our first 90 days, we had meetings. I had a genetic counselor that was assigned to us. I was able to actually find a research study that shows that Nathan would be at risk for psychiatric decompensation if his residence was moved. It was partly how I was able to get him, I believe, a spot on the residential side at the Center for Discovery, because I was able to say to them, hey, he's now in your hospital setting. Moving him will actually cause him further regression. Here's the study that came from this genetic counselor, because this incredible organization that is funded, through donations and through, fundraising and all of that. So there is some, but you're right in that because it's rare, most people don't know about it. And, it is a very small, piece of the pie, that is dedicated to that. Whereas opposed to autism, which had been my last 10 years were spent, being involved in it's so much. And I would always feel like, God, I just don't relate to,
Yeah.
any of this. Like he had ABA for a
Mm.
year, which is the standard protocol for autistic kids, and didn't make any progress. And it was like, well, I don't understand, what's going on here. So that's sort of that bigger pie that, of course, there's a tremendous amount of funding behind it, but it's, just this big umbrella. You don't really, know what exactly it all is.
So you had said in the beginning that the pressure it puts on a marriage is
Yeah.
definitely challenging, and I'm sure like thinking about what is the right treatment, where to go, but also it puts pressure on a family. Now, during this time, you also had another child, correct?
Yes, yes. Lucas is Nathan's brother. He is 2 years younger. So Nathan is 12 and Lucas is 10. And Lucas had to deal with much more than his share of responsibility and trauma. There were many times where we had very near death experiences with Nathan. One I can remember, it was COVID, and Nathan was
Mm.
6 and Lucas was 4. And I was like a working mom, just trying to, keep my kids at home and work and do, all the things, but sort of be, stuck at home. And I remember we were in the driveway and they were, riding on their little tricycles. And all of a sudden, Lucas screams, Nathan is going down, down the ramp and into the road. And I, with everything in me, running as fast as I could, Lucas, with me, just screaming, please stop, stop. And Nathan's just laughing and goes right into the street, is missed by feet, a huge
Wow.
truck, because it goes downhill, our road. So literally pieces of his bike falling off. And Lucas at 4 years old says, afterwards we got, and we're just in shock. You can only imagine, we never recover from something like that. Lucas says to Nathan, Nathan, you could have been dead. And Nathan says, do it again, like had no safety awareness, no, none of that. And so there, Lucas had quite a few, choking scares. Nathan has something called hypotonia, so he's a real choking risk. He stuffs. There's just tremendous, you know, um, trauma that, and also he's adjusting to, not having Nathan at home as much as he made him crazy. And it was crisis when it was home. He says to, all the time, I think, even though he sees how good it is, and I think it helps that we now have him in his his home and his residence, and you can just feel how amazing it is. Lucas still doesn't, comprehend, like, why can't he be at home? And I don't know. And a lot of people don't. There's a lot of judgment in, putting your child in a residential care, that comes with that. Yeah.
I bet. I mean, I can imagine like that same age, between like 9 and 12, some kids going away to sleepaway camp. And it's a big,
Sure.
hard decision, but it's temporary. And I hear all my friends, they struggle. The kids are gone all summer, but you now have made this decision for Nathan because it's safer for him, it's healthier for him, and he'll get the best treatment possible. Talk us a little bit about like why that is. Like why is it? And I know you mentioned that moving him around is not good, but tell us a little bit more about like what is it that by him living elsewhere is better than being at home with the people that he knows. Help us understand that so we can raise awareness to other people as well too.
Sure. So, because of Nathan's unique, condition, he is just incredibly fragile, psychiatrically, physically. There's a lot of, he has seizures. There's a lot of medical, issues, that he has. And, it happens. It wasn't, this was a very gradual process, right? That it's almost like the frog that boils in the water and that, you don't know until, it's there. And so, it happened piece by piece. But I would say that when he entered puberty, and this is just, again, my, opinion, because a lot of this is, you're just sort of putting pieces together. But he had some type of a break, some type of a, and we didn't know that that's what it is. We just knew that he stopped sleeping. And so he would wake up in a manic state, every other night. There would be, poop on the wall. I mean, it was really bad. My husband would have to drive him around for hours just to keep so that our other son could sleep.
Mm.
And so it ultimately got worse and worse through the years to the point where we were in such crisis that we thought, oh my God, there's no hospital to put him in. Like there, for a child that has, these sort of severe issues and not knowing what's going on. And so I started to, and again, this was before it got this bad. He's an incredibly social kid. He is the happiest. Like it's incredible the light that he brings. And in my opinion, he's smarter than all of us. But he's unable to regulate himself. And I don't know how else to say it other than he needs a tremendous amount of therapeutic care and support. And I didn't know that anything like that existed. And I have to say, when I started to kind of, as a mom, believe that, oh my God, this might be too much for us to handle, all I did was say, let me just make a few calls and just see what's out there. Right. And so what I realized was there's nothing out there. And then I found the Center for Discovery. And I was like, as soon as I watched the video, I started crying. And I knew that, oh my God, there is a place that exists
Mhm.
that is so far ahead of its time. They grow their own food. He goes swimming. He has, yeah, he has a tribe of people on ships, right, that keep him safe. And they truly love and value him. It is different than any other place. Every every person with a disabled child wants to be there, but no one can get there. And so I was like a dog with a bone. I was like, okay, I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know what's going to do it. But like this to me was, and I didn't know how it would all pan out. But it ultimately, we were able to get there. But it really was a miracle from above that that happened. I mean, but to answer your question, why couldn't he be at home? I mean, it is truly not what's best for him. He needs the stability, he needs the
Sure.
medical care, he needs the structure in a way that is hard for anyone to understand because changes to his environment and stress actually cause him to have something called psychiatric decompensation. So he loses the ability, skills that he doesn't gain back. And so he's really at risk. And that's the hardest part is grieving for the child that you did have or that you thought you'd have or all of that, but also being very grateful for the joy that he brings to every room he enters, whether he has the words for it anymore or not, he still lights up any room he's in.
Ida, do those kids ever age out?
Well, they do, and that's one of the big conversations that I had when he first went into the hospital setting there, because they actually have there's two parts. So there's a hospital which is brand new. He was there the first day. This was in December of 2024, and it was sort of church and state. To the other side, which has been around for 40 years, which is the campus, the traditional residents. And so those they do age out, but they also do care for a certain number of adults. But one of the first things that the president spoke to me about was she said, we take such good care of these kids, and they have reports showing that they're healthier than the rest of the population, the way that they grow their own food. I want to live there. It is absolutely amazing. But what she said to me is it was devastating in that then they'd age out and they'd go to a nursing home setting and die.
Oh,
Just the other day, I was talking to the counselor there because I'm struggling and this is a big adjustment. And she was going to a celebration of life ceremony that afternoon for one of their adult residents that has lived there for 32 years and was the longest living person with that rare genetic syndrome because of the way that they
Sure.
cared for this person. And so this is the best you can get, period. And I think that, our society, we believe we can take care of everything on our own. But this is a very more of a community. And so when you have this population, that is truly what they need to be social and valuable and functional and cared for, and to do it with such love and such expertise and it was something that I didn't know existed. And so look, no place is perfect, but I have to say, hearing that story and knowing she's going to the celebration of life. So they do have adults. So their big mission now is to expand their care for those that do age out so that they don't lose these really cherished, wonderful people on the other side when they're not going to be cared for the way that the center is able to.
He's just a hippie living in a New York commune. That's all.
That's true. Damn right. Absolutely. He's got pigs and goats and sheep, and I mean, it's incredible.
One question I have to ask.
I can't even get a word
Yeah.
in edgewise with this guy.
Jamie, take a break. When you're contemplating having a second child, how much did you struggle with? Could this happen again?
They
But
wouldn't
we didn't know it was even there yet.
They didn't
Ah,
know.
So
so
we all we knew, because they're 2 years apart,
you
was
rolled
we
the
knew that
dice.
that Nathan was delayed,
I got
like a lot of kids are. He
man.
didn't start walking until he was 22 months old. So we knew there was something
Sure.
going on, but he was, I mean, he was the light of our life. There was no reason we wouldn't, have another child. We didn't really know that how big it was. It was such a slow process of losing and no expert knowing. The head of neurology and the head of everyone just was, they would literally say to us, wow, Nathan is really unique. He's going to help us do our research. Like he just didn't fit anything, that they would know. So we really, again, didn't know how bad it was. And it didn't get really bad until I would say until Nathan was 8.5, 9 was when it
Beginning
started
of
to
puberty, right?
really start to kind of have this, these symptoms that were to the point where we were in crisis.
Well, I think that that's like the beginning of puberty, right? That age, like
Yeah,
on
it was
average.
the
And
beginning
that's,
of
Hormone
puberty. Yep.
changes.
yeah, and that's when so many diseases, we know friends and family that have the diseases really become prevalent
Yep.
at that age because your body's changing so much. I can't even imagine how you and your husband were balancing those sleepless nights and, cleaning up after
And
whatever.
and both working full time,
Right. How did
both
you
big
do
jobs.
that? I mean, like sleep
You know,
deprivation in itself, like I do think that that is like the worst form of torture is sleep deprivation. Like if you can't sleep, you can't function at all.
Look, I truly believe that, the divine God, whatever you would call it, protected me in giving me, it was almost like when COVID struck, right? I was able to pivot virtual. I didn't know
Mm.
quite how much I was going to need that to be able to survive, and be able to kind of take a nap during the day to do workshops and, whatever. I mean, I don't know how we were able to. We had an incredible nanny that we also feel was sent to us from divine. She also had an autistic child. She was a speech therapist. So,
Wow.
so we had support in that we had someone that was very skilled to be able to kind of be a third pair of hands. But no, there would be no sleep. We were in such mode for years that it was something that, I don't know how we got through it. And I still feel like, it's like, how do you share it in a way? Like I would talk to other kids with special needs and they would be like, yeah, it's really hard. My child has a problem paying attention or they're, and I would just, look and more power to you, but no one would be able to relate to what we were really dealing with in terms of having this situation where no matter what medicine, no matter what doctor, no matter what, that our child, and he wouldn't sleep. And then we would send him to school and they would say, oh, wow, he's paying better attention today. Or he's only eloped 100 times instead of 150 because he's tired. Like meaning that was a good thing that he, got less sleep. Like it was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Have you been able to connect with, you said there's 65 cases in the state of New York, but that there's 2,000 worldwide. Have you been able to connect with other families that are going and navigating the same challenges?
I have. My first order of business was to get the medical support for Nathan. So even though I did join, the parents, groups, and I, sort of had, a bit of that community, for me, because it's only been 8 months since we got the diagnosis. And so it's really been more, oh my God, like we've been on the wrong direction. Let me make sure that all of his medical team now knows. And so it's really about educating them on what this is and why it doesn't respond. So that has been my primary focus. But I did join quite a few groups through the onboarding process because they have such a, onboarding process. And I think, what is hard is that most parents have their kids at home with this. Most people do not have the luxury, the benefit of having a place as skilled and as incredible as the Center for Discovery. So in some ways that's its own, like, it's hard to relate because I feel guilty. Like, here I am able to sleep through the night, able to, go on vacation, able to do things that I, not been able to do. And so when I hear their stories, I can only sort of say, I hear you, I've been there. But unfortunately, a place like this just doesn't exist. It is the only one in the country that does what it does. It is that rare. It is that unique. And when we went to the benefits, and we started to meet people with a lot of money that, that really try everything to support to get their child in, like they wait years. And so it was literally a miracle.
How large is
That
the
he was
residency
able
up
to
there?
get a spot. How what?
How large is the residency?
It's about I think there's about 1,200 or so
Wow.
that they service. It is the largest employer in Sullivan County. It is and it is, expanding, but they've actually gotten to the point where there's no longer a workforce, meaning that they have exhausted all of the workforce, in the area. They've kind of expanded as big as they can, with what it is. But they're yeah.
Hmm.
So how often do you get to see Nathan?
I see him twice a week. And so I will go, usually once during the week I'll go, and then we go once on the weekends, just as a family. So and we're still getting used to, like, he's still not used to us being there. Like, where do we fit? But it's something that, they have family swim and they have these beautiful grounds. He has a zip line, steps from his home. There is a tremendous support that encourages, community and family to be a part of it.
And I know that in the past few months, there was a tremendous milestone that he was able to say something to you for the first time that you had not ever, or you'd never heard it, or it was never
No, not I never. You realize a lot of the pain of it is Nathan used to be able
to do things.
to communicate. And so we watched him lose his words. We watched him lose his cognition. We watched him lose his ability to be potty trained and all the things that you expect a child. And so,
At age 8. So did it start go? So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So it started to decline at what age? At 5?
there were always small regressions, meaning we would look and see his IEPs for kindergarten and it would be like more advanced than he was, in second grade or, whatever it was. So there was always that sort of direction. But I would say that at that 9 years old or at that, you started to see a real losing of his ability to communicate. It is almost on a loop. And the best way that I can describe it, and what the latest revelation, and this was just from last week, where they met with the medical director, and I wasn't surprised to hear it, but it was hard to hear, is that he's basically been in a catatonic state, meaning that he's in a loop and he can't get out. And you wouldn't know it because you would see and you would just say, oh, he just repeats himself a lot, and that's a lot of perseveration. But what they call it, because it goes along with some other regressions and some other things, that it's actually very typical for a PMS patient to be in this psychological sort of like break. And so there's going to be a very different regimen that we're going to try with him. But that's that's crazy to think about. Like, so he's basically been stuck in a loop and sort of in his own, because of this for these years, and that each of these stresses or meds have kind of contributed to that continuation, of that. But the thing that he said, so, one of the things that I was, very honored to actually be, I made sure, he was there the first day because I was like, I understand PR and marketing sort of from that hat. And I was like, all right, he'll be noticed. Like maybe we can get to the other side, right? If he's in the hospital as the first, we'll go through the growing pains with them. And so we did. And so the director, Terry Hamill, she's incredible. She runs the Center for Discovery. She's been there for 40 years. And so she was doing the ribbon cutting with the governor because it's been funded by New York State. It's a shared. And so because I've been very active and, very much a parent that sort of comes on board, she said, would you be the parent that sort of, is there the day she's there? And she says, you have 30 seconds. Can you make an impression in 30 seconds? And oh my goodness, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to say? What am I? And I just trust that if I just calm down enough and meditate and, it will come to me. And so I said, okay, I just got to, be honest. And it came to me at 3 a.m. And so I said, I met the governor. I said, Kathy, it's such a, a pleasure to meet you, Governor Hochul. And, and I can't tell you what this place has done for me. And thanks to you and thanks to everyone here at the Center for Discovery, for the first time in years, when I said I love you last week, my child said it back, and it was true. And there was not a dry eye, and that was the 30 seconds. And then I was like, okay, and I waited for a month to follow up, and I said, so is there a spot for me yet on the other side? Because
Yeah.
and again, I don't know that it all helps. I'm a big believer in we talk about, micro moves, right? If you can just get 1 inch closer, and I'll tell you, the first conversations that I had, with Terry was there's no way to get to the other side. It's church and state. There's no, and as the year went on with the hospital, it was just understanding, well, wait a minute, you guys, this mission to do the best, and they believe in their mission. They're an incredible organization. If I can find the study that shows that it's actually going to be, do him a disservice, and it's actually going to cause him harm, for him to have to go somewhere else, maybe. And again, it was just a bunch of factors that just miraculously came together. But I have to say, sharing that with the governor, that he said, I love you for the first time after, I don't think that hurt my case,
No, I mean, what a success story, right? Like, I mean, to find a place that cares for him and it gives him so many opportunities he would otherwise not even have if he was living at home and having,
right?
there, he was not there. It's just, we just know that, like, there would be nearly impossible.
Yep,
What an incredible place. And so your family's adjusting. You're in
yep,
the just a few months now that he has been there permanently. And you've got
yep.
Lucas at home, and the three of you are kind of adjusting to that. Tell us a little bit about, like, you said the hardest part is realizing that, he's not there. But, like, how is your adjustment going otherwise? What's changed?
Well, I have to say that this place has given me tremendous peace of mind. Being where his residence is called the Smith House, and it's really a house, like a home. It is
Do you
truly
share
a
a room
home.
with someone else, or is his own room?
No, he has a bigger room than he has at home. And he has there are 4 boys and 4 girls. There's one wing that's female and that's male, and they all share a house, and it's connected to a second house of 8, and they all do everything together. Like they have music therapy, and they go every time he says going to Zumba, he's doing, all these different things, and I, can keep up with his schedule, and it's absolutely, incredible. So he really has a home. And I would say that the hardest part, is is just the hole that it leaves. There's like I know that it's what's best for him, so I no longer have the look. You're always on edge. I still get calls all the
Yeah.
time, like they thought he ate his iPad and swallowed glass and was watching if he needed to rush to the hospital. Right before he left the hospital, he fell in the bathroom, even though it was 24/7, and knocked his two front teeth out. And so that was something. So there's you're always on edge no matter what. But I have to say that it's I can exhale finally, and I feel like I can finally process. And I think I've been in this state of just fight, flight, or freeze, or just go. And now it feels much more like a marathon and not a sprint. And that I can actually, but also look, there's a tremendous amount of sadness, and I think as much as you can intellectually, I'm someone that's very smart and resourceful, and I'll kind of make it happen and do what I need to do. But now I'm, at the point where I'm like, okay, well, now you just have to let yourself feel and let yourself process and pause and share. And so, I'm so grateful to you for giving me the opportunity to share my story messy and all over the place and right where it is raw a month out because it is very healing to be able to do that.
Well, and
Mm.
it's absolutely our pleasure, 100% our pleasure. But that's what's so interesting is that, you become a parent and so much becomes about your kids that sometimes you forget who you are, but you're still here. You're
Yeah.
still a person. You're still Ida. You still have your life. You're a mom. You have another son. You're a wife. You're a daughter. You're still you. And I would imagine, I don't want to assume here, but you lost a lot about of who you were by caring for somebody else.
No, I'm
And
not the same person, and I will
yeah.
never be. But he's also taught me everything that I know. And so much of the sort of truth, this belief system that I have that he's actually more evolved, and that he's just actually beyond words and he no longer needs his words. And that's a whole thing that you know, the thing that I posted that you said you started to share your truth was called the AI quantum truth, and it was really about this awakened intelligence that I believe the neurodiverse brain is absolutely more advanced, and ultimately we will be beyond words. And there's also this whole autism spectrum and way of communicating that's a little bit controversial, but that I've seen and I believe in that has to do with spelling and the telepathy tape. So there's a lot of layers there that Nathan has sort of taught me, and his message to me always, has been, Mom, take care of yourself. I'm fine. And I'll share with you. This was something that my husband got me. These are these little, fill in the blank mommy, things. And so this was when Nathan and Lucas were 4.5 and 6. And it like asks questions like, what's mommy's favorite food? Broccoli. And what is, mommy's job? And mommy likes to go. And what, mommy tells me. And so one of the questions here was, she's smart because she knows. Right. And so Lucas, who was 4 at the time, said, she's smart because she's a teacher. Right. And Nathan says at 6, she is smart because she knows how to love me.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Is he totally non-communicative today?
He can say a few words, but he's unreliable. So he cannot tell you if he's in pain. He cannot tell you if he's thirsty. He cannot tell you he is on a loop. So he might ask you, "How are you?" He'll find like certain words that will get a reaction, and he'll be very scripted. But he cannot meaningfully communicate. So he won't respond when you say, he might say, "How are you? How are you? How are you?" Car, like he just might say a handful of words, but they won't necessarily be related to what you're saying.
If you
So,
touch him, like hold his hand or look in his face, will he engage? Or is there an
oh yeah,
attention
oh yeah.
deficit problem?
He will absolutely engage. He will be playful with you.
Hmm.
He's very he laughs more than anyone I know. But he has a hard time regulating himself. I think the thing that they're next, now that he's stable and he's, in the place he's gonna be, it's going to be about figuring out how to calm his system out of fight or flight. Like they will say, like that they need to basically sit on him so to speak, in order for him to like sit and stay still, but he will engage in the way that he knows how, which is, he'll look at you, he'll run, he'll hold your hand, he sparks up any room. Like if you take him to, and this is something that I would always notice about him, when he was younger, is he was the mayor. Everyone knew him. Like you'd go up to me and the school would say, "Oh my God, you're Nathan's mom." Like everyone, because he was so charming and so social. It's one of the reasons I knew that he couldn't, that being at home wasn't what was best for him. Some autistic, that's like they just want to be by their own. He thrives off being with other people. But you need 15 people to like be able to manage him because he's just a motor that always goes and doesn't stop.
Keep
So he
him away
absolutely
from
does engage.
keep him away from the girls' cabin, baby. I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, he would flirt. He would flirt. He flirts. He would be such a flirt that they would walk down and he'd be like, "Hey, girls, come and have pizza." I mean, there was tremendous. He has tremendous personality. Like there's so much in there. I think that's been the most frustrating, hard part is that I know there is so much in there, but it's stuck. And it's been, and we can't figure out how to get it out, and he's fine. Like I feel like it's harder for us, than it is for him.
Is it because he's on that loop that he also may not know the difference in time of how often he's seeing you? Like I know you go twice a week, so is time, relevant to him? Like does he realize that when you're not there for a few days, you haven't been there for a few days, or is it almost as if
He
you're
doesn't,
just
he
there?
didn't have a reaction when we left.
Yeah.
That's part of it is the catatonia. Like he is kind of flat sometimes where he's not giving the reaction. And then
Fine.
he's all over the place in that he's hysterically laughing to the point of you can see his pupils are so dilated that he's actually in flight or freeze. So, he's just now starting to show emotion when I go and leave. Like, so he makes it actually very easy. I thank him for making it, he didn't make it hard. He didn't have a big reaction. He doesn't have a big reaction when we come or when we go. And so it makes it a lot easier, for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Whew, what
Whew.
an ordeal.
Well, I know that it's fresh. I mean, obviously you've been dealing with it for years, but or managing it and handling it for years, but it's newer for you coming out. And so thank you for allowing us to tell your story. And if somebody does want to support that facility, where can they go to learn more about the Center for Discovery? Is there a website you
So
can
it
share?
is. They have an amazing website. It's the Center for Discovery. They have more than one campus. The campus that he is in is, Monticello Harris, area. Rock Hill is the hospital that they just opened. It's an incredible, meaning like a bit of a more long-term hospital for those that are really complex. So if you have a child where, you have no answers and everything seems to be just giving you questions, like this hospital was built to literally figure out what others cannot figure out. And so that's something that it's hopefully going to be the model for a new paradigm of care, and that is what their mission is. So it's the Center for Discovery, and that PMSF is that Phelan-McDermid Foundation is the website. Incredible foundation. I have never come across a better run organization or foundation. And it has been a godsend for us to sort of just have that support through this tough diagnosis.
Any idea what percentage of children today are on the spectrum?
Sure. So it's actually increased 175% in the last 10 years. I think it's like one out of every 32 or 31 is actually autistic. But in my belief, and maybe this is another episode, in my belief, autism and ADD specifically, it's not an epidemic. In my opinion, it is actually an evolution,
Mhm.
and that they are actually more intelligent and more advanced, but they are beyond their bodies. And so this is not a Tylenol problem or this is actually a evolution of the brain that ultimately I think they are here to awaken our intelligence and raise our consciousness, and that they're actually they don't fit into the world, but but again, there's starting to be a more of a movement of others that believe this. But yeah, it's one in every 31 kids are diagnosed with autism these
Wow.
days.
Wow. Well, we started off our conversation talking about our fork bracelets, Wonder Powers Unite.
Yes, here they
And
are.
so, listener, I tell this story. So I met Ida a few weeks, months, I don't even know how long ago it was now, when I went up to Brooklyn to speak at the Corcoran office about the Unfunked book. And she noticed my fork bracelet, and I told the story of how there was a young girl who was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And when she was dying, she asked to be buried with a fork. And they said, "Why do you want to be buried with a fork?" And she said, "Because I was once at a gala event where they were clearing plates, and the server said to me, 'Hold on to your fork, the best is yet to come.'" Now, the server meant dessert, but she heard it in such a different perspective that the best is yet to come. So she decided that when she passed, she wanted to be buried with a fork. I saw that story and I said, "Oh my gosh, what a great reminder every single day. I wonder if there's a place I can get a fork bracelet." So I went on to my favorite French retailer, Amazon, and I found some fork bracelets. And then when I was in Ida's office, I was talking about it, and someone said, "Oh, there's a women's resource center down the street. They have fork bracelets. You should go get one." And so I did. So this is mine, and I gifted
And then
mine.
Jamie gifted me
Yeah.
hers, which was so special. And I have to say, I have worn it all the time. And I look at it and I say, the best is yet to come. And it has helped me through this. It really has.
Did,
I
has
love
did the
that.
dessert ever show up?
Oh, well, I like to tell people sometimes you can just be like, fork it, like get away from me, or like just fork it
Yeah.
out. Or remind yourself, like, listen, life has a lot of funk and it is there for all of us in different reasons. And, for
Yep.
a long time, I'm sure people saw you at work and didn't even realize the things that you were going through because we don't
Sure.
talk about them. We don't make it
Yeah.
real. And I'm so glad that you are making it real. So would it be safe to say, and you can say no, if there's families that are going through this, they can reach out to you and get some
Oh,
guidance
yes,
on what they can
absolutely.
do?
I would be
Wonderful.
happy to be available for that. It can feel very isolating, to be in it. And I can't thank you guys enough for creating such a safe space
I
to
have a
share
last
stories.
a question
Yeah.
also.
Don't interrupt people.
I always do that. Nathan's condition was genetically linked to something. It was missing a number in the chromosome.
22.
On
Yeah.
all the cases of autism, is there any genetic link they've discovered?
Sometimes there is. When he was tested, it said that he did not. Sometimes that there is a genetic. There are two types of autism. One type that comes where it's genetic, and other that they say is more environmental or they sort of undetermined. So it can be, yeah, absolutely.
Well,
There's so
thank,
much that we don't know, right? There's so much
Yeah.
that we just still don't know that we're learning, and it's just incredible. So thank you,
thanks
thank you,
for
thank
sharing.
you for sharing your story. I'm looking forward to us connecting offline and talking
Yes.
some more because you're just awesome. And funny story, like we said in the very beginning, we had this whole conversation, then we find out that she knows Uncle Mitch. So I mean,
It was my dentist since
I was
3
like,
years old. The
wild.
best.
One of the
Dr.
best.
Coonan. Shout out to him.
I
Amazing.
mean, like literally wild. And she's like, "Oh, I grew up in Brooklyn." I'm like, "Oh, who was your dentist?" And I was like, "What?" She didn't believe me. She was like, "No, no." And then we called him and he answered. That
But
was
I
really
did
funny.
because then I said it's coherence, right? Because we were talking a lot about
Yes,
serendipity and coherence and all
yes,
of it. So I love
yes.
it.
The universe
Well, I'm
wanted
just so
us
grateful
together.
to have met you. And I know that we will be doing more together. So I look forward to continuing the conversation. And it's so nice to meet you, Dad.
My pleasure.
Great.
Spring is coming, I promise.
Okay, I'm going to watch the snow melt now.
We have an
Okay,
extra
guys.
bedroom and a pool. You come down anytime.
I love it. I
All
love
right.
it.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Ida. Good
Ida.
to
Well,
see you.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I don't know whether I would have survived this.
I don't think that you would have.
Well, wait a minute. I
Oh
did.
no, it's not. Don't joke. But I think that it takes a really, I mean, like that's what she was saying, like the
The strain.
pressure and like the strain in a relationship. And I know a lot of
Such a
relationships,
small percentage of marriages survive that. It's just
well, such a small percentage of marriages survive in general. But and she's got it's Isaac, right? Did I say that wrong? Yeah.
Nathan,
I know her youngest son.
Lucas.
Lucas, sorry, no, I said Lucas. Sorry about that. My brain's all over the place.
See, I still got it.
You did, Lucas. And so, it's like you just do. And she's such a gentle soul when you meet her, like in person, just her energy is so incredible. And she was the one that was chosen to do this, like she's got such a gift. And this is, her gift to the universe to help her son find his place. And it's just such a beautiful story.
Don't pick me, please.
You're Yeah. You didn't even like me throwing up, let alone if I had had a broken bone or anything like that.
It's a separate podcast on personal vomiting
On
situations.
my therapy. We can talk about that. Super
Epcot,
helps like
Epcot,
later.
Japanese restaurant.
Oh my gosh. That, yeah, if you ever see me, ask me about the Japanese restaurant in Epcot and how I was traumatized by both my parents. I will just leave that there. No. But
Wasn't it?
Ida, what a credible story. And thank you for sharing about your story with Nathan and just everything. If you are a family that is facing some of the same challenges, struggles, or I can't think of the word.
Issues.
I'm so like totally just emotionally hijacked right now. Reach out to her because in this world we have to normalize asking for help, and when we do that, that is when everything becomes even better. So connect on LinkedIn, read her article there. It was amazing and incredible and moving, and we're just grateful we get to tell these stories.
Hasta luego.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.